Between the stories we tell, there are the stories that shape them. While we prepare for the next season of Haunted UK Fiction, we're taking a moment to step away from the stories and into their origins. Ink and Influence is a short-form series from Haunted UK Fiction, exploring the authors, ideas, and moments that gave rise to some of the darkest and most enduring works of fiction. In this episode, we turn our attention to Daphne du Maurier and the ideas that shaped her legacy. The rugged, stunning landscapes and culture of Cornwall features heavily in Daphne du Maurier's work. A place she visited regularly as her family had a country home there. Though her work is often cited as romance, there is a constant thread of suspense and mystery with Gothic undertones. Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Browning, who would later become Daphne's husband, sailed to London to meet her after reading her novel, The Loving Spirit. The marriage would last 33 years, facing a series of challenges over the decades, including the feelings of jealousy related to her husband's former fiancée, which inspired du Maurier's famous 1938 novel, Rebecca. The depictions of Cornwall in Daphne du Maurier's various novels helped create a very niche tourist industry for the region, as admirers of her work have, for decades, flocked to various Cornish locations featured in her work. The raging seas, rolling hills, expansive moorlands, and general sense of mystery that lays over the land certainly lend themselves well to the dark romanticism of the stories she wrote. According to du Maurier's son, she believed that places were more important than people. Arguably one of Daphne du Maurier's most famous books is Jamaica Inn, inspired by a real-life location on Cornwall's Bodmin Moor. It was a writer friend of hers who suggested she and his daughter go on a horseback ride through Bodmin Moor and spend a few nights at the Jamaica Inn. The stretch of moorland on which the inn lies is ripe with abandoned mines and a vast expanse of open space peppered with stones and heather. The two young women set off one afternoon with plans to visit an elderly friend who lived approximately 40 minutes away. They would then return to the inn via the road that skirted the moor. Du Maurier would later describe their plan as foolhardy, noting that she was unprepared for the darker side of the beautiful landscape. It was late November, and the weather changed very rapidly, as it so often does in Cornwall, with the wind blowing in clouds that darkened the sky before dropping cold rain on the two riders. It was late afternoon and daylight was rapidly fading. The women had been riding for over an hour and were lost in a sea of moorland that stretched as far as the eye could see. The riders braved a steep and slippery downhill trail that only brought them to a swelling stream, forcing them to scramble back uphill as the skies opened up to release torrential rain. They found an abandoned cottage in which to take shelter from the violent storm. They waited an hour or so for the rain to slow, but found themselves faced with a thick fog stretching across the land, making it impossible for them to find their bearings. Daphne's friends suggested that they let the horses lead the way home, hoping that their interpretation of home was the inn, and not their actual farm, which was over 30 miles away. The women climbed into their saddles and set off into the foggy darkness. They rode across mile after mile of moorland in the dark, hoping the horses wouldn't injure themselves on the craggy rocks or sink into the wet bogs. Eventually, to the women's great relief, they came to the road, and the roofline of the Jamaica Inn and a series of lanterns peered at them through the fog. People had begun to gather to go in search of them, and their lamps provided warmth and safety to the two exhausted women. Daphne expressed instant inspiration upon seeing the stone exterior of the inn, feeling that there was a story there and that the characters seemed to emerge from the location. They sat by the fire with plates of food and scalding hot tea. During a visit to the Jamaica Inn a year later, the women sat with the local vicar, who told them stories and legends surrounding the moor and the inn itself. He told them that the inn's isolated location made it a haven for smugglers and their contraband. It's impossible to speak of Daphne du Maurier without touching on some of the works she influenced, one of which is Alfred Hitchcock's famous film The Birds, based on one of her short stories, as well as the countless films that have been made based on her novels, including several variations of Rebecca. Daphne du Maurier passed away in 1989 at the age of 81 in her beloved Cornwall, where she spent the last several decades of her life. It seems appropriate to end this with a quote from her novel Rebecca. "A dreamer, I walked enchanted, and nothing held me back." If you enjoyed this, you'll find more stories waiting in our feed and a new season not far behind. Thanks for listening.